Hello, heathens. How are you? I'm asking how are you to everybody like they're going to answer me. Today I have real archaeologist, not a fake one, Dr. Bill Farley, who also goes by, I believe, Archaeology Game. Is that correct?
Yeah, on Twitter, my Twitter handle is
Sorry, hold on.
Archaeology.
Hold on. Oh no. Ooh, there is so much static. I couldn't even understand you.
So I have a see if I can fix this because this happens Did it switch it back?
No, that's so weird.
I wonder if I just abandon the microphone and see what we get. How about this? Is that any better?
Yes.
All right, so that's I abandoned my microphone, so my audio
Okay.
quality won't be as good, but it seems like it's causing issues, so no
I don't
worries.
know. The audio sounds really good right
Well,
now,
yeah,
but also it's a live stream.
yeah, it doesn't
We
have to
won't
be
be
that good.
doing anything. Yeah, it won't be anything like crazy. All right. Hi, Stacy. Hi, Scott. So, Stacy says she's in the UK and she's hoping to hear a bit before she sleeps. So let's do this. Why don't you introduce yourself to the fine people, and then I will admit my transgressions, and then we will chat.
Sure, sure. So, yeah, my name's Bill Farley. I I am an archaeologist. I have a PhD in anthropology, and I'm a professor, associate professor at Southern Connecticut State University, which is a little regional university, and well, as the name suggests, in Connecticut in the U.S. And so by day I teach classes and I do archaeology. I work mostly in New England in the area where I live. Is where my work in my own backyard. That's where my field work is. But by night I do this public archaeology thing. So yeah, I'm on Twitter on at Archaeology Game, and then I have a YouTube channel that's Archaeology Tube, which is not super big, but it's growing a little bit, and fight misinformation on the internet about archaeology whenever I get a chance, and all of the interesting ways that it intersects with bigger problems and things like white supremacy and racism and cults, and it's wild. Archaeology ends up being connected to a lot of those things, or what we saw it's called pseudo-archaeology in the business, which is the sort of thing that Graham Hancock does on his show. So, yeah.
Yeah, I did see someone. So I posted a video about this today. I don't know why on my TikTok I get the most unhinged lives that show up just on my feed. And usually I would say like it has to do with your interests or what you watch, but it does not. I can
No.
assure you, most of these things do not. So I do get a lot of like Christians, of course, which okay, even though I keep saying like I'm not interested. Like I'm so not interested. I left 10 years ago. But in any event, I did see one today that was like, I have researched that aliens created humans.
Oh yeah.
Ask me anything,
Oh yeah, popular theme.
you
And it's
know.
interesting. One of the reasons that this has become so we just had the Society for American Archaeology, which is like our big professional organization, just had our annual meeting this weekend. And unfortunately, I couldn't be there in person, but I was able to be a part of a session that was about these very issues that we're sort of talking about tonight, with a bunch of great folks that are doing this kind of work in different places in podcasts and in blogs or just writing academically. And one of the things we talked a lot about was trying to start presences on places like YouTube and TikTok is important because the algorithms in those places will send you to the worst possible. Right? You've all seen this in other realms, but in archaeology too, they will send you to the worst corners of the internet. And so having places where people can have kind of a soft landing, where real experts will tell you a little bit about what's actually going on in the world, or tell you about genuinely really cool stuff that doesn't have to be made up and fake, is really important. So it's kind of a project we're all kind of trying to work on together, and that's kind of what I'm most interested in anyway, is trying to fight that exact pipeline that you're talking about, that weird stuff that just shows up, you know.
Yeah, and like it's I consider myself to be relatively intelligent. Like I'm certainly not a genius. I don't have a PhD, but like I'm relatively smart. um and that being said, like I see these things and I know okay, obviously that's not true or like that seems outlandish, but oftentimes like I can't put like an articulate response together because it's just not my sort of. Sorry, I'm trying to fix my microphone. It's not working.
Yeah, we're both working
Uh,
mic issues. I have the exact same microphone. This is the good old
oh,
fashioned Yeti Blue, but mine's
my
mine's not working at all. So you're doing better than me.
I the things to turn on the side. Okay, I did
Yeah,
it.
those little knobbies that make it roll.
Yeah. I can hear Jimmy Snow yelling at me right now because he told me how to set this up for best sound. Anyway, sorry Jimmy, love you. I really did listen. In any event, I can't always articulate why something is demonstrably false without doing like a ton of research into it, right? So it's super useful for even like me to have somewhere to go where it's like, here's somebody that knows what they're talking about and can sort of like debunk this thing that instinctually I know is wrong, but like I don't have the sort of the expertise to then, hop into it in detail. That all being said, can you share with the fine people? Oh, I forgot. I was supposed to do my confessional. I said that I was going to watch Ancient Apocalypse to prepare for this. I said I was going to do that, and I lied. I didn't do it, and I'm not going to do it. But I have seen a lot of responses from people about how just abysmal and like white supremacist it is. So maybe you could tell us a little bit just about who Graham Hancock is. I did look him up and do some research, unfortunately. Um, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I watched it for both of us, so don't worry.
Thank you.
And many people, other people did. So Graham Hancock is an interesting character. He's been around actually for a really long time. He's been, isn't that always in a foreboding way to start? He's an interesting character. He's been around for decades. He's actually been around for probably like 30 years. And he started out as a sort of what you might call a mainstream journalist, even even something of a quite well respected one. And then sometime in maybe I guess in around the 80s, he started writing books about archaeological theories, and he wrote about all the big pseudo-arc theories. So he wrote a book about aliens from Mars, which he now sort of
Mm.
denies ever happened because he doesn't like being associated with the ancient aliens folks. They're sort of gauche in his eyes. He wrote, he's written numerous books about Atlantis and different sort of theories about why archaeology is wrong, and there's actually all these like ancient civilizations that have super high tech, and he's that they may have even had psychological powers and could levitate things and could
It's
and
like
could build.
Matilda.
Yeah, it's kind of wild stuff, right? So he's been throwing these theories around for ages, and then a few months back, well, I guess maybe about 6 months ago now, he had his sort of big break onto what I'd say is the mainstream, in that he got this show on Netflix, Ancient Apocalypse, which may or may not have had something to do with the fact that his son is in fact an executive at Netflix, which is just a
Ah,
little twist. With
Nepo
no
Daddy.
Yeah, so a little bit, like I don't know for sure what impact that had, but it may have. So he shows up on Netflix, and this show is like a culmination of all of his ideas from his whole career. He puts together, but it focuses around. He doesn't say it in the title, but it's about Atlantis. So his basic theory is that during the last ice age, about 15,000 years ago, during the Pleistocene, there was a mega advanced civilization that existed, that was super high tech, and maybe even had mental powers and had unlocked levels of. There's actually is a sort of spiritual element to it that might be really in line with some of the things that you talk about a lot in here, having to do with religion and alternative religious practices. Either way, there's this super advanced civilization, which he eventually
Sure.
admits is Atlantis in his mind, and that civilization was destroyed in the titular ancient apocalypse by a meteorite from the heavens, and destroyed completely. So we can't find any archaeological evidence of it. But that
No,
a
that's
few,
convenient.
yeah, very convenient, very convenient. But there were a few, who knows how many, some number of sages from this Atlantean super civilization who then spread out and taught all the ancient indigenous civilizations of the world how to do all the cool stuff they did. So they actually went and taught the folks in Turkey how to grow crops for the first time, and become farmers. And their descendants helped build the pyramids and helped build all these cool sites that get talked about on the sites, real archaeological sites.
Right.
Oftentimes that make no sense in terms of the timeline he's discussing. So they'll be thousands of years too new for what he's talking about. So he'll just say, the dates are wrong. And then another twist to all this is that he says the reason why when archaeologists come out and say this is all bullshit is because we are also like a cabal, like a secret cabal of this.
Oh yeah.
This is where the culty stuff comes in. We're like the Illuminati or something like that. And our job is to hide all of this exciting evidence. Now, when you talk about the white supremacy part, and this is the last thing I'll say in sort of framing this, I'm sure I'm missing stuff because it's such a complicated issue. Where that comes from, so the question about sort of racism, that's where this gets as charged as it gets when people talk about racism and white supremacy. And Hancock gets very upset if people call him a racist, and his fans get very
All
upset.
white people do.
Oh, for sure. And it's not surprisingly, but he gets very upset if you say that. And he says, well, I never say that. I never say that anything racist in my show. Well, all of his theories are rooted in, he basically borrowed and adapted them from much older theories that come from the 19th century, which were quite explicitly white supremacists. They were like literally like this lost white civilization. Those sages from Atlantis, they were white sages, and they went out and taught all these black and brown people how to do all of this stuff. So that's where that sort of element comes into it. But he gets very defensive if you bring that up. So.
Yeah, white people love to be offended. My favorite. Sorry, I won't get off on this tangent, but my favorite thing to do if I'm like really just wanting to start a fire is to go on one of my platforms and say that all white people are racist, including myself.
Yeah.
And then just watch people implode. Also, sorry, this is, I don't know if you're familiar with Joshua Bowen, Dr. Joshua Bowen. It's actually offensive that Heathen Queen scoffs at this. She knows full well that Sitchin was right, and Sumeria was founded 436,000 years ago. Long live Nibiru.
We got
Dr. Josh is an Assyriologist.
Yeah, I know. It's,
okay.
It's just,
You know Megan.
I know. Well, I know in the sense that we're like Twitter mutuals and are connected in that way. But I immediately, as soon as I get so out of my depth on this, one of the tricks that you talked about before, being like, wow, I'm not very smart. I don't have a PhD. First of all, you don't need to be smart to get a PhD. You just have to have a high pain tolerance and a lot of spare time. It's much more about time and endurance than anything else. But in terms of that, like, archaeologists are very highly specialized. So the sites that Hancock talks about in the show, they're all way out of my expertise realm, right? So when I've made my own response stuff to it, I tend to focus in on the sort of the methodological problems. Like, he's just making stuff up about, say, radiocarbon dating, and I can talk about radiocarbon dating. But like, the site of Göbekli Tepe, I teach about that in class, but I'm not an expert on that, right? So there's so much expertise out there. So go follow your local archaeologists on Twitter, because there's amazing people out there talking about all these cool stuff, cool sites.
Josh, would you like to join us to talk about Göbekli Tepe? I can't even pronounce that word. Also, something that really drives me nuts. Sorry, we were planning on talking about this, but I forgot. I only just recently remembered today to take my Adderall, so I'll just be like all over the place for a while, probably the whole time, honestly. That's just sort of who I am. But in any event, so I, being sort of an religion person on TikTok and other places, like, the amount of like dumb shit that people tell me with like their full chest. Like, for instance, they told me, like, well, if the Exodus didn't happen, why did they find chariot wheels at the bottom of the Red Sea? So they didn't.
Yeah, they probably,
that was actually a joke. And y'all took it super serious. Yeah, like, it's just wild to me that people will hear things and then they just run around saying it, like, without fact checking anything at all.
Yeah, archaeologists end up becoming such an important part of this whole realm of I don't know, criticism or just being a thoughtful person who likes to live in an evidence-based world, because it's what's one of people's very favorite places to go for bullshit evidence. We can say swears on here, right? This,
Oh,
this
yeah.
is YouTube. You're allowed to swear, right? It's like it's one of the first
I
places
swear
people like to
everywhere,
go.
even if you're not allowed.
Yeah, you can go and find some fake archaeology that says, oh yeah, there's chariot wheels at the bottom of the Red Sea. And if somebody says that to me in person, I'm like, I've never heard of that. Like, but I guess I'd have to go and do a search. There's the whole realm of biblical archaeology, which is its own realm of archaeology. It's an interesting place because biblical archaeology has got its own journal, and there
Yeah,
are
its own realm
people.
of pseudoscience. Like it's so it's like, hey, this is what I want to be true, so like I don't really care about anything else. I'm only gonna take the things that work for me, right?
Oh,
I
it's
mean,
easy to cherry pick, and Hancock cherry picks like he's a champion of cherry picking.
champion.
He loves to take just the tiny little bits of evidence that fit together to make his narrative, and then everything else, anything that's not one of those cherry picked bits of evidence, is the archaeological cabal, obviously planting evidence.
I mean,
To,
obviously.
yeah, I mean, obviously. Yeah, somebody mentioned Mini Minuteman. So one of the reasons this whole thing has gotten back into the news a little bit is because Mini Minuteman has finally come in and started to release his review videos, and he's like the biggest archaeology TikTok YouTube person. He's this like 22-year-old kid. He's like brilliant and very engaging, and I
I
taught him
think
every.
I've seen
Yeah, I mean, I taught him everything he knows, and
yeah.
we exchanged the DM on Twitter one time. So I taught him everything he knows. That's everything. He learned it all from me. He learned it all from me. No, no,
Did I tell people about Dan McClellan?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
taught him everything he knows.
Yeah, big archaeology. We joke in the background about our checks that we get from big archaeology. I really look forward to that check every month. I use it to pay rent.
It's like the people that think that like all women get together and have like we're all in some secret society, and that's like why they can't get a date.
Yes. I mean, all these realms, right? It is amazing. You hear language, you can hear language and verbiage from like the incel community in these debates about archaeology. It's bizarre, right? It's
In
so it
every
makes you
in every community, it's like it's actually insane how much incel culture, or whatever you want to call it, has seeped into the public sphere of like everything. Like, unfortunately, somehow I've become like the go-to person when it comes to incel stuff, because I got so tired of it that I just started reading all about it and like sort of tearing apart why it's so problematic. Um, but like, even what's his name? That shithead of an ex-vice president that we had, Pence. So many to choose from.
Pence.
Where he's like wouldn't be alone in a room with a woman unless it was like his wife, and like there's a whole sort of thread that walks that all the way back to sort of like the men going their own way movement of like the incel whatever. And I'm like, that's fine. Like, men can go their own way. They should. And that way should be away from me. Like, whatever the opposite direction is. But they definitely don't have to be like massive haters that incite violence. Anyway, I'll move on.
Yeah, well, you get guys like
Sorry.
Matt Walsh, right? I mean, I don't know how much we were not supposed to talk about this stuff, but like you get like
Fine.
guys like
Furry Ben
Matt
Shapiro.
Walsh.
That's what I call him.
Yeah, and that guy is a monster, right? I mean, he's truly
Horrifying.
heinous. He's a horrible person, but he's got a popular video that's about transgender skeletons and throwing around memes about archaeologists being able to tell whether you are male or female. And like every bioarchaeologist I know has written a thoughtful blog post somewhere about how that's bullshit and that's not how osteology works. It's not how skeletal identification works. And no, you cannot. You're just wrong in every single way. But he's out there making his video anyway about how. So it's amazing. Archaeology is this place you can dip your toe in, and there's some scientists and archaeologists who like to think of it as a non-political, we're doing science, and right, we don't talk about politics here. I'm sorry, but it is politics. It is political.
Yeah.
We can't avoid it. It's a part of what we do every day. So you got to be ready to engage with it, or you're going to get steamrolled.
I think living in like the society that we currently live in, everything is political. That's what I tell people all the time, is that like everything is political. And the only reason that you'll think it's not political is because it's something that doesn't affect you in a way that you dislike.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
in
it's
any event,
if you could stay above it, if your scientific integrity allows you to cruise above the level of the politics, that just means that those politics like don't touch you personally, right? I think probably is really what's going on there.
yeah. Well, and people like Matt Walsh and like Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson and who's that other Steven Crowder, just like really annoying, terrible people. I hate them so much. Um, Obviously, none of them care about journalistic or scientific or intellectual integrity in any way. All they care about is saying the things that drum up one, engagement for them, and two, that make their fan base like it just confirms what their fan base already thinks basically or wants to think, right? It's the same with apologetics. Like that's why you never hear anybody becoming a Christian because they like someone heard a really good defense of like the Exodus being a real thing. Like it doesn't happen. It never happens. And sorry. Anyway.
It's not. I don't know why that would draw somebody into a life of spirituality or religion. And this we're immediately into a realm in which I know nothing, and now we're in
Sorry.
your no, that's good. I don't mind chatting. You could be the expert, and I'll be the one who asks questions because I don't know nothing about all that. But it's fascinating, and I had fun following your Twitter and watching you yell at people and laughing and liking your tweets.
I'm glad people enjoy it. It's a favorite pastime of mine. Yeah, so I mean, I guess like part of the way that I found my path out of Christianity was through reading scholarship, and some of it was archaeological scholarship, right? Like what does the record say versus what I was told happened. And something that actually blows my mind the more I think about it, and I've been thinking about it for like the last 10 years, is the way in which, if you grew up in a fundamental evangelical or Christian household, you're taught that the Bible is a history book, right? And so, whether explicitly or indirectly, or directly or indirectly, we are basically taught that like the world started 6,000 years ago with like the Israelites effectively, right? So I mean, it's like it's Adam and Eve. Okay, I guess maybe they weren't Israelites yet, right? Because that comes later. But like effectively, God created these people. They had their progeny, and eventually it became the Hebrew nation. Okay. How in the world are there grown ass adult people out there walking around thinking that like the world started with like with the Israelites, like the Merneptah Stela, whatever it is. I just don't get it. Like, there's just so much history, and it's not hard to find. And it's like the archaeological record for ancient Mesopotamia is wild and fascinating. But there's just like, even if it was the most boring thing ever, like there's just so much of it. Like there's so much. Sorry,
it requires a certain level of conspiratorial thinking, right? Because you have to be able to ignore the evidence that's there, and the only way to do that, I think, is usually to say, well, the evidence is all placed there by God to test us, or it's made up by, we come back to the archaeological cabal. But this is the classic, like much older than Hancock in our current debates. Archaeology versus science versus faith debate, which I think is a not necessarily a fair dichotomy all the time, but in this case maybe it is, right, of the human evolution studies versus the 6,000 years, right? And that 6,000 year time frame supposedly comes from this, right, Irish priest, right, or he's a bishop or whatever he was, going through the Bible and counting the generations back. And you're right, you have to accept that the Bible is not just a work of history, but like a super history, right, an infallible history that says, because we all learn when studying history and archaeology, or even just the history you learn in regular public school, you should learn about like textual criticism, right? The idea that any document is biased. All documents, all of them, right? Even whether no matter how honest the person is trying to be in writing it, it's biased just by simply the goal of the piece of writing, or the knowledge level of the author, or the author's beliefs, or any millions of things, right? So it's the idea that the Bible, you have to ignore the idea that the Bible was written by humans and believe that it was divinely inspired, right? But if you can get past that, if you can say, well, I don't think that the Bible was divinely inspired, instantly the evidence becomes overwhelming, because we have the fossil record, we have the archaeological record, and then more recently we have genetic evidence. We have all that DNA record, which shows us that just our species goes back hundreds of thousands of years. Just bipedal, yeah, just bipedal primates goes back millions of years, and then life on Earth goes back many more millions of years, right? And it's so we just can't, Now, I don't. Again, I would never tell somebody that learning that means you should abandon your faith. Of course
I
not.
would.
But you, I don't.
Sorry.
But well, you've got to find some way to reconcile that, I guess, right? And so maybe that means becoming an atheist. Maybe it means somehow coming to some more nuanced understanding of what the Bible is and means. I don't know, some more symbolic reading of the interpretive, metaphorical reading of the Bible. I don't know what the answer is, but for me, it's the evidence is so overwhelming you can't possibly ignore it. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can't tell anyone how to be religious or how not to be religious. And I've told people repeatedly, I'm not actually trying to turn anyone into an atheist or into an agnostic or into anything. People can come to their own conclusions. I will fight against it when those conclusions turn into actions against marginalized people groups. Now we have a problem because your beliefs are becoming something that are harming somebody else. But like in reality, there are ways that I have seen people reconcile all of that, right? Like saying the Bible is not a history book in the way we think of history today, right? And it's not infallible, or it's written by men and therefore whatever, right? So like, there are ways I'm sure that you can be way more intellectually honest and engage with the Bible. But this idea that the Bible is it's history and you can just like go back and be like, that happened like word for word, it's not justifiable. In any event.
Yeah, it's just it doesn't work, right? Yeah, it just doesn't work. Or like
right.
So I mean, but yeah, that 6,000 year date supposedly comes from this, well, I don't know, 15th century, 16th century, 17th century. I don't remember what time period that guy was from, but he just literally just was like counting the generations back in the Bible. He's so and so begat so and so, and so you just count that back and count up the years.
It's nuts to me that anybody in the world would think that we have 100% accurate generational records from 1,000 years ago, let alone 6,000 years ago. And like for people that were nomadic for a long time, like, huh? What?
Yeah, if we come back to Hancock a little bit, since you bring up the idea of sort of nomadic people and this depth of history thing, it comes back to some of the stuff that Hancock's talking about. One of the things I think that I and a lot of other archaeologists found the most problematic, let's say, to use an overused term maybe, but I think it works here, right? About ancient apocalypse was it denies the achievements of ancient peoples, right? And what he basically says in it, while simultaneously saying that archaeologists are all racists and we all we all hate indigenous people. And listen, archaeology has a deep, powerful colonialist past and an anti-indigenous past, and it still has strong streaks of colonialism and racism in it today. I think if you ask real archaeologists, most of them will admit to that and recognize that we have a lot of work to do still in that area. But he's using it as an excuse to try and get away from the fact that what he's saying in that show was that ancient people were too stupid to know how to do any of this stuff on their own. They couldn't build incredible monuments like those at Göbekli Tepe. They couldn't have invented agriculture. They couldn't have done any of these amazing things that we have tons of evidence that suggests that they did. And so instead, they must have been taught by these sages, these Atlantean sages. And because the audience watching him looks at ancient people from 12,000 years ago and they say those people are nomads. They're automatically associating those with non-whiteness, and then the sages with
Right.
whiteness, right? It fits a white supremacist narrative that Hancock is taking advantage of to tell a good story in his mind, what he sees as a good story. So when we criticize him of that, nobody's saying that he straight up on the show is he's not stupid enough to just show up on the show and be like, yeah, the Atlantean sages were white. Although he does imply that pretty clearly in some of his books, so he can pretend like he doesn't, but he does. But it's you have to do just the tiniest bit of thinking to recognize how he is fitting into these very deeply racist narratives, and that was what got me into trouble, of course, right? What got me into this whole argument, I said before, this is nowhere near my area of expertise, but I had this little YouTube channel. And I made a couple of videos about the show, just critiquing some things. And in one of those videos, I asked Hancock I didn't even call him a white supremacist or racist. I asked him to denounce people who use his work as ideological cover for white supremacy and racism. And that pissed a lot of people off. And those videos that I made have gotten a lot of views, but they also have gotten hundreds and hundreds of unhinged comments, unhinged stuff. And some of it really fascinating, some of it very abusive and, and harassing. Yeah. And in interesting ways that are maybe worth talking about that I haven't talked about much with people, but this made me think about the nature of harassment and its connections to anti-blackness and anti-queerness too. So, but maybe that's a conversation for 10 minutes from now. I don't know.
We can talk about it. Yeah. I told before, everybody knows me here, but before I went live, I said the same thing I always say, that I want it to be an organic conversation. We have a general topic, but like where that ends up, I don't know. Because I found that trying to force a conversation, it just ends up being really boring to watch.
No, it's more fun to just let it go.
I'd much rather have my ADHD run the show,
Yeah.
Whatever.
So where I was going with that, and this is not, I don't know if I'd call this a fully fleshed out idea, but it's an observation that I've made, which is, so in those videos that I made, I've had hundreds and hundreds of comments, some of them nice and supportive, some of them thoughtful and critical, a very small minority, and then many of them just really nasty or just boring.
Insane.
Yeah, so some of the and really, but some of the really nasty ones, the ones that really attacked me personally, which was a relatively small minority, but the ones that attacked me personally tended to do it in interesting ways. They tended to do it by, so I'll it's probably pretty easy to tell, but I identify as a cis white man. I won't talk about my sexuality necessarily, but probably most people would assume I was straight if they looked at me on the street. The two things that I saw in those comments tended to try and attack my identity by moving me as far as they could get me away from whiteness and from straightness, is what I would say. So I don't know. Again,
Sounds like a win.
It's really, it's very, it's so what they tended to do was latch onto the fact that I am Italian American. So I have certain features that fix me. So I have curly hair and I wear my hair a little bit longer. It's a little hard to tell with these headphones on, but I wear my hair longer and it's curly, and I sort of embrace those curls. I like, it's my
you
vanity.
have nice hair.
It's my absolute vanity. And I show it off as much as I can. So they either would attack that part of me, and in ways that tended to sort of almost like push me back into a time when Italian Americans were like actually discriminated against. They're not anymore,
Right.
but they were, a long time ago. Sort of weird 1920s style Italian attacks, which don't land very hard in 2023, but okay, it's interesting. Or, and maybe this was more common, I would be accused of being queer, of being gay, of wearing feminine clothing, feminine jewelry, anything to connect me with either femininity or queerness or blackness. So it was interesting that in attacking a person who's, as far as these people could tell, a part of all these sort of dominant ideologies, the way that they tried to do that was to strip me of those dominant ideologies. So something interesting to say about the fans of Graham Hancock who felt the need to go on and defend him on my YouTube comments.
I will say this. I'm glad that at least, sorry, not to revel in your harassment, but I am glad that finally some men are getting comments about their hair, and that's why people can't take them seriously.
This is true
Because,
equality. This is what we're looking for here.
okay.
Yeah.
Now that we're all familiar with the fact that I have multicolored, non-natural hair, which I think everybody knows, and in fact I pay for. I get so many dudes in my comments that are like, the pink hair, blah, 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 blah. I can't take you seriously.
Yeah, yeah, and I get that a lot. No, I do. I sometimes I sometimes wear a nose ring. I have a nose piercing,
Oh
and I have
yeah.
one ear piercing, and I don't have them in right now just because I also shaved yesterday for the first time in like a year and a half. I have usually been wearing a short beard, and I immediately regret it. I'm gonna try and grow it back. I don't know. I just was bored, right? So, but similarly, I play around with my appearance a lot. Sometimes I'm not really right now again, but sometimes I like to dress a little bit more flamboyantly, wear color, wear sort of
I
like a
support
big
this
earring.
message.
And I love doing that. I love playing with that. And I love playing with gender a little bit and gender norms and expectations in clothing. And it is very interesting that those are the things that I definitely get attacked for whenever I say unpopular things on the internet, which
Oh,
is,
of course. And it's always funny to me because it's like, yeah. Look, I don't like, yeah, yes. Sometimes I wear clothing that you think is feminine. Are we just like stating facts?
yeah.
Like, I don't like, it's not like, okay. It's like, because I mostly take shit from men on the internet, um, almost all of it. I get a lot of men, and like, there's three insults, right? Stupid, fat, ugly. Demonstrably, I'm not stupid or ugly. Also, fat is not an insult. So, like, people are like, how do you not like take these insults to heart? And I'm like,
You should take him as to some extent, like it's a little bit of this is a person who is so stunned by by what you're saying that they literally can't think of anything actually critical to say. So they have to go to this just absolutely ridiculous
it's so
places to
silly.
attack.
Yeah, it's so silly. And this is not me being like, oh, I'm so hot, but it's just like having like a realistic view of myself. Is not like I'm a supermodel, but like I'm not like ugly. So if you're gonna sit here and really tell me like, oh my god, you're so ugly, like I just know you have nothing else to say. Like you're
Yeah.
just being an idiot.
And I usually get people who attack me and they'll call me like queer or whatever, or they'll call me some much worse word and of that variety. And my response to that is sort of like, you don't know anything about my sexuality, first of all, but I also don't like care. Like what is that supposed to be?
Yeah, exactly.
Going back to the incel thing, I have on several occasions, this is on Twitter, not on YouTube, but on Twitter, I have had on several occasions guys, always men, take pictures of my face and do that weird like skull measurement shit to it. Do you know about this?
Are you kidding?
Yeah, oh yeah, like right in the comments, they'll take my picture and they'll be like doing angle measurements to prove
Y'all-
that I'm.
I just know these men failed geometry, and then they're out here trying to like use the TikTok filter to like make a point. Like the only point is that you need to take some remedial math classes, but like we all knew that. What I do want to say on that in that vein though is that one of my friends, and I will not mention who it is, but it killed me because for some reason on like a random Saturday morning, he sent me this link and I was like, so I clicked the link, you never know, could be getting rickrolled. It's not really his style, but it was a link to like the Mayo Clinic or something, and it was for men that wanted to have their jaw lines like sharper and more defined. So effectively you get your jaw broken because that's like the only way to do it. And then I don't know exactly the methodology, but they make your jaw like more angular and like, more sort of defined. And like, if you know me, you know that like I don't care about cosmetic stuff, right? Like if you want to have shit done, like do you live your best life? If you feel good, I love it. I have like I've gotten lip filler, I've gotten Botox, I've been super open about it. I've gotten like the lines around my mouth filled. Like I don't care. Right? Like it's fine. But it's very odd to me because he also sent me another link that was like for men that want to be taller. And they break your fucking femurs,
Jesus.
both of them, and then insert like metal rods.
Oh my
And
God.
then so like it's incredibly painful and there's a ton of healing time, obviously. And like there's so many things that could go wrong. But like and I was telling him, I was like, it's very strange to me because women will be like, actually, like, if you could just be like a good guy, like, just be a good person. That's it. Just be a good person. Don't be a bigot. And then, like, men are like, got it. Gonna go get my jaw broken and my legs smashed. Then you're gonna like me. So I'll be taller and I'll have a sharper jawline.
As
Like,
far as I can tell,
what?
this is all coming from other men. Like it's
I
right.
think
So yeah, right. The history of cosmetic surgeries are often connected with like fucked up societal expectations of women and of men in some cases. And obviously, this is some cases where we're talking about men having those fucked up expectations. But it seems like these expectations are entirely coming from other men. That men are defining these for themselves within those communities, and they've convinced themselves that it's the shape. That's where this thing was, right? This supposedly these like magical dimensions of your face that prove that you're handsome or not. And what I think these guys were trying to prove in this case was that I was gay. They were trying to prove with the measurements of my
have
face
you
that I was in
seen a
fact
number of
gay.
attractive gay men? Sorry.
So they weren't necessarily calling me not attractive. They were
Okay,
saying they were
well,
trying, I think, to prove that the shape of my face proved that I was in fact gay, and because that was the one part of my identity, I guess they couldn't clock just by looking at
so
me. I don't know.
bizarre.
Very strange, very strange behavior. I don't know why that was even relevant, since the thing we were talking about had absolutely nothing to do with that. It was some sort of archaeology thing, probably. And what does that have? What does my sexuality have to do with any of that, or my gender identity have to do with any of that? What the hell is that all about? So bizarre, super bizarre behavior. But it
Yeah.
all roots, coming back to archaeology one more time, a lot of this stuff is rooted in like phrenology, right? Which is this like ancient study that comes out of biological anthropology and archaeology of like the shape of your skull proves that your intelligence and whether you're creative and whether, which is all bullshit. It was all fake scientific racism. And it was all really just to prove that white people were the smartest, right? Which was just, it was all just circular reasoning, right? Well, I already know this, and so I'm just going to look for the evidence that proves that I'm right, right? It was just that sort of thing.
Yeah. So sorry, before we go on, I wanted to say this. So my producer is not here tonight. Love you, Correa. That being said, if you have questions, I would assume for Dr. Farley, because like, why would you be asking me anything? But if you want to, you can. We will do question and answer. So super chats, as always, will take priorities. Second, if you have a question, tag me in it, and I will put it on the list, and then we will get to that if there's super chats after the super chats or at the end when we do question and answer. I'm just going to say that once because I'm going to forget. Okay. Yes, sorry. I don't. Yes, men. So obviously, I have a bit of a reputation on the internet for just dragging men, specifically bigots. And like I'll get a lot of shit because I will absolutely talk about their appearance. Because if you're going to start making fun of other people for their appearance, then like keep that energy, my guy. When like I come for you. And so, what's interesting though is that like I'm the oldest of 5 girls. I understand this is anecdotal. I come from a statistics background. I understand. But I'm the oldest of 5 girls. I have a lot of female friends. I have a lot of female followers. Like, I know a lot of women. And yes, there are random women that are like, I will quite literally turn a man down if he is under 6 foot tall, right? Like, yes, those women exist. But the reality of the situation is that most women I know don't really care that much. Most of them will say, yeah, I would like it if they were taller than me. And like we can debate whether or not like what that is or if it's okay or if it's unfair, like that's fine. But like most women are also not 6 foot tall. Most of us, including myself, are about 5'5", right? So like, yeah, there's going to be a range there. But the thing is, like, all of this shit is rooted in this oppressive patriarchal system in which we, and white supremacist capitalist system in which we have assigned masculinity basically to certain traits. Like, oh, you're tall, that's masculine. Oh, like, you're a woman and you're tall, well, that's masculine, so sorry, men aren't gonna like you as much, right? Or like, or we men should be taller than the women they date. Like, why? Right? Why? What does it matter? And I've dated men that are shorter than me, and like, that was fine. Like, it's just weird to me how many issues for both men and women that the patriarchy creates that women are blamed for.
Yeah. Yeah.
But hey,
Yeah,
what
it is. It's enormously patriarchal. The height thing is, and this is where where we talk about when we talk about patriarchy hurts men too, right? And why men need to get on board with feminism by and
I gave
large.
a whole
Because
presentation on this.
yeah, it's like, right, it's patriarchy is terrible for men. It's everything, every bullshit thing you have to deal with as a man probably comes from patriarchy, right? It's like, and all these expectations, because it is true, right? You do men experience like a pressure to be a certain body type and a certain size and a certain weight and a certain height? And of course they do. It's
Yeah.
coming from that same place. And if actually the goals of feminism are to eliminate all that shit for everybody, including men, so it's
Yeah.
like, get on board, guys. I don't know.
Come on, you can do it. Yeah. Oh, well. In any event, sorry, I have taken this as I do
This is okay.
conversation like way off.
I mean, I find this stuff fascinating, and I don't consider myself an expert in any of this stuff, but it's just so important, and I get, and I engage with it all the time. And I think about it all the time too, and I try and think about it the ways that it does intersect with my work and my expertise. So I don't mind talking about this stuff at all because I think it's super important.
I I agree. Um, I've been meaning to ask this for a little bit. So I know you said that you sort of work in your own backyard, but like, what is your area of research, I guess, or special area of expertise? I almost said
Yeah.
specialties. That's
Yeah, well, we do all kind of have multiple specialties, true. So I mean, my sort of day job, archaeology stuff, is I'm a historical archaeologist. So I study, my expertise is actually like on the colonial era, and a lot on the experiences of colonialism and the impacts of colonialism, especially on indigenous people, but also European settlers and enslaved Africans, and just that pluralistic community that's happening in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries in New England. And so, that's a complex time, and you do have all that. You do have to engage with the impacts of things like capitalism and industrialization and the slave trade, and because those things are relevant no matter where you're working, even if you're working on a site that is pretty like on a reservation and is pretty exclusively an indigenous space. You still have to be thinking about all those things. Or if you're working on a sort of a white settler sort of a household, those things are still super at play. So that's my sort of time period that I'm interested in, especially the 17th century, so early colonial era in New England, and especially in Connecticut. That's where most of my work has been. But I've also worked in like Massachusetts and Rhode Island. But then also with the pre-colonial era too. So because again, I don't know, it's impossible to, history is a continuity, right? And we have this old break in the archaeology of North America, where it's like historical archaeology and prehistoric archaeology. We used to sort of break those into two halves, and we still sort of do. I mean, I just called myself a historical archaeologist, but that has a sense of saying that anybody who came before colonialism, so native people who lived here where I'm sitting for 12,000 plus years, and other parts of North America much longer than that even, like that they don't have history, which is of course bullshit. That's not true. That's not how that works at all, right? So you have to really understand that whole continuity of existence to try and contextualize any time period. So I'm going off on a tangent again myself.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I don't know. So that's kind of my specialty. My methodological specialty, I trained in archaeobotany, which is the study of plants and like people's relationship with plants. Although I've become more of a generalist as my career has gone on, but that's kind of my method specialty. And then more recently, it's being an archaeologist on Twitter. Which
Public
is,
facing.
yeah, but well, we call that public archaeology, right? Or so it's like, or science communication or whatever is what the sort of general term is. And
It's
that's
the
actually,
history or the history, sorry, the future of the humanities.
it is really important, and it's become increasingly important to me. I think it's super important, and I don't know if I'm the right person for the job, but there's a lot of space there for people to be speaking and teaching and talking, and so I'm happy to be there to be a part of that conversation. There's many other fabulous archaeologists that you should follow in all your different social medias saying cool stuff. So
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's not exactly the same, but I feel similarly sometimes in like the discussion of religion. Like I have a lot of lived experience, but like I don't have a PhD in it, right? So sometimes when people ask questions, I'm like, I don't know if I'm like the best person to answer this, but like I'll give you what I know.
you
Um,
probably are the best person who's there and willing to speak, right? So it's like that's
yeah,
important, right? It's like none of us are. I don't feel like I'm a perfect expert even on the things that I'm supposed to be an expert on, that my silly PhD is supposed to be about, right? But
you
it's like
silly PhD.
it's if we're not speaking and we're not in that space, then there's a vacuum, and that vacuum is going to be filled by not great people, right? It's going to be filled by
Yeah.
terrible people, frankly.
What is your hot take on Roanoke?
Oh, Roanoke, like the lost colony. What do I think happened? I think probably, I don't know if it's that hot of a take, but I think that they just probably just disappeared into the woods. They just like,
Aliens.
yeah, no, I don't think it was aliens. I don't think it was Atlanteans. I think probably
Damn it.
they either all died because it was,
I mean, they did all die eventually,
a lot of people, yeah, a lot of
for
people.
sure.
That's a good point. No matter what, they definitely did all
Yeah,
die.
they're definitely dead now.
Unless there's some weird stuff going on, some Indiana Jones stuff, right? Because maybe they found the Fountain of Youth or something.
Hey.
We're write our own pseudosciences. I think they probably just like were running out of supplies, and they just like headed into the woods and all kind of either integrated into existing communities or died. I think that's the most boring explanation. It's probably the right one.
No, I mean it's Occam's razor, right? When I was younger, I was like obsessed with historical mysteries, which will not surprise anyone. Um, it's also like really interesting to me that it took 33 years before anyone was like, "Hey, you're autistic," because the things that I was obsessed when I was younger with things like Roanoke, or like the Titanic. Like I read everything I could get my hands on about the Titanic. Why? I don't know.
It's an interesting
Um,
subject. Why not?
Roanoke, same, was like obsessed.
Obviously, you
Um,
probably know a heck of a lot more about it than me. I mean, I don't know
well,
that much.
honestly, I kind of forgot because it was so long ago. But like, I do find these sort of, I mean, Titanic's not a mystery, but like these lost people in history to be really interesting, even though we can't. That's so funny. Sorry, I just got a notification from Twitter that Occam's razor is now following me. Um, like, why?
Is it because you said Occam's razor? Well, let me test it. If I say it, will they follow me?
I don't know. That was very funny and coincidental. Uh, so sorry. I just like saw it out of the corner of my eye. I was like, what the hell? Um, but like even like in Christianity, when you read the Bible, you get the story, especially in the New Testament, of like a very limited number of people who were well educated, or at least more educated than other people, and that's all we really think, read, write about. And I think it's similar outside of the Bible. We hear these stories of like famous Roman emperors, but then like how much do we know about the average family that was living at that time, right? And while the emperors and their like military exploits are really interesting sometimes, um, I think like learning about sort of the everyday people is a lot more interesting, especially because like there's so much that we don't know.
Yeah,
So it
and that
becomes like its own mystery.
that's the absolute beauty of archaeology, right? Archaeology does give you an avenue to explore the lives of everybody, of just normal folks, because material culture, which is the fancy word we use for like artifacts and sites and features, that stuff just gets left behind, and it doesn't have that filter of the historical record. The historical record up until very recently was laser focused on elites, right? And then in really, and if you go back more than a few hundred years, like ultra elites, right? You're really just talking pharaohs and kings and right and
Right.
lords and stuff. And so the idea that archaeology you can just explore the house of just a regular family, and learn a tremendous amount about what their daily life was like. And that can be the only way sometimes to learn about those things. So yeah, archaeology is such a cool way to do that. You were talking about the idea of being fascinated by mysteries, and I think a lot of people, and I have been surprised, some of the biggest name like pseudo-archaeology, like anti-pseudo-archaeology people, which is this little crowd I've been running in for the last year or so. This little gang of knife fighters that we all are. That's how many of them have admitted, like, oh yeah, I read a book by Von Daniken in the 80s, and that was my, who's like the godfather of like ancient aliens, pseudo archaeology stuff, and like I just thought that book was fascinating. I read Chariots of the Gods, and that got me so excited, and that was their pathway in. Or I have students almost every semester who are taking my class because they watched Ancient Aliens or they watched Curse of Oak Island. Or I'm sure in one or two more semesters, I'll have somebody who says it's because of Ancient Apocalypse.
Hey, listen, I love the Curse of Oak Island.
Those guys are, oh my God,
It's
everything
like
is.
I don't ever expect them to find anything at all, but I keep watching. I keep watching. I don't know why. I do find it like a little bit weird that there's all this random stuff on that island, but like I don't think there's a treasure that's being like hidden by all of these trap doors, but I'm gonna keep watching.
But it's like it's such a like I've never watched Curse of Oak Island, but it's always like the Knights Templar, right? Isn't that what it's supposed to be? Is it or
Well,
something?
I mean, it's definitely a large theme that they think that it is, but like in their defense, I don't know, I don't feel the need to defend them, but just as like information, um, they have other like theories that they explore, and like I don't know, I think I like it, but it's
But yeah,
it's not
but
real. Like
those things can all be like pathways into finding an interest in history and archaeology and the humanities more broadly. And well, there's like certainly like being interested in Roanoke or the
same.
Titanic, like that's harmless, right? That's not even in this realm of like. I'm sure there are pseudo archaeological theories, but I mean, I'm just imagining somebody has written about how Roanoke people joined Atlantis. I'm sure that's out there.
Just watch American Horror Story. There's a whole
Yeah.
series
Oh,
on Roanoke.
is there a whole thing? I've never watched that show. Because horror. I'm not very good at horror. Except in video
Don't
games,
watch that
I
then.
can do horror video games, but in movies and TV shows, I don't do too many of them. But those are. But even folks who are, yeah, I have somebody who watches Ancient Aliens, and they show up in my class, and I can sort of say, all right, well, here's the real deal, and like here's why that show's actually full of shit. And it's like, but it can be a pathway to those places. So again, coming back to that theme of why is it important to have a presence on YouTube, on TikTok, on Twitter, on Tumblr, I don't know, wherever, right? Is there an archaeology Tumblr? Probably.
Damn, I don't even. I haven't been on
There,
Tumblr in a minute.
there must be. I've never done Tumblr, but there's got to be an archaeology Tumblr. Somebody in the chat, check and see if there's an archaeology
I'm
Tumblr.
sure there is.
It's but having that place for that sort of, I keep calling it like a soft landing, right? Especially
Yeah.
with TikTok and TikTok and YouTube, which has become what I've become really interested in. With my own channel and stuff is, can that be a place where somebody who has just watched all of Ancient Apocalypse and now they're like searching for more information about it? And yes, they're going to get videos from some people who I won't name who are just horrible people on YouTube. I mean, not even just like making bad content, but just bad people.
Oh,
We've
is
got
it
our own
someone
Matt.
I know?
It might, I don't know. It might be. We've got our own Matt Walshes and our own Ben Shapiro's.
No, I'm thinking of
There's the one in particular who's the guy who tried to get me fired, and wow, that's a whole nother story. What's that guy? What the hell is his name? There's this one guy. He's a huge YouTuber. He's like 1.5 million followers.
oh, okay, it's
And
not who I'm thinking of
no, and
then.
and, and this guy, he convinced he directed them at several people. One of them was me, and asked them to write fake reviews about us on the internet. And
Oh, I saw somebody else talking about this, I think.
Yeah, it might have been Hoops or somebody, one of those guys.
I
They
can't
because it was, or Flint Dibble maybe might have been. So we were, yeah. So I had like 15 fake rate my professor reviews appear. That was like very weird day, and I tried to get them taken down, and they deleted some of them. Some of them are actually still up, and they're hilariously fake, like hilariously fake. They're clearly written by like 62-year-old men in their basements, who definitely have never taken my classes. But they also called my employer, tried to get me fired. I had a whole day on the phone with HR and my
Oh my
dean
God.
and the police department, the university police department. Not that they were never going to fire me, but it was just like I had to go through all this rigmarole and talk to them about it. But yeah, it was really so these guys, they fight dirty, these guys, like they do. We were talking about all the harassing comments many of us have gotten, and again, I can roll with that stuff, but that whole event, it got a little real. It got a little hit a little close to home. It got a
People
little
are
bit like
wild.
that
Yeah.
was that was when I got the most freaked out, was actually because it spilled out of just like, and I'm pretty mild, right? People
Yeah.
are much more. I am very impressed by others who are more in the face than I am, and yeah, I was so.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that earlier on in my Twitter days, somebody tried to dox me by like posting my website that I made for my business that I run. And I was like,
That's my
what?
website, man.
Yeah,
I
they're
don't know what to tell you.
like, do you want to talk to the manager? Like, hey, like it's just like I don't. It's just I don't. Anyway, but yeah, no, they definitely fight. They definitely fight dirty, which is again why I never feel bad. But yeah, I guess like if you don't mind me asking, how we do have a question about this. How do you bring that up with your department? What a nightmare. My question is like, what were they saying? Like he's putting out information that's true. Fire him.
The reviews were really wild. Like they were they were mostly just like talking points that had come out of the Hancock supporting community. So they said
Mm.
this. A lot of them accused me of being political. So that was what a lot of them were focused on. Oh, he's a leftist, communist who's spouting his politics in the
Ooh, did they
classroom.
call you a Marxist? That's my
Oh, I've been
favorite.
called a Marxist, a cultural Marxist. I've
I
gotten
love
all
it.
of it.
I'm like, define Marxism.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll wait.
this
I'll
is
wait.
all of my. After they don't know, my secret heart dream is to become the archaeologist of left tube. That's just all I really. I've become the bread tube archaeology. I, I don't actually want to be that, but that's what they think I am, and which is really wild with my 3,000 YouTube subscribers. They think that's what I am, and so there were stuff like that, or stuff that just like said, oh, he's making up. He's a part of the archaeological cabal. He's making up information that accused me of being a liar. Stupid shit, really stupid shit. I'm
I
gonna go
wish.
in. I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna go in. Or some of them accuse me of being racist and anti-indigenous, which is a talking point that Hancock likes to throw around. So good night.
Good night. Thank you for staying up to watch. Yeah, yeah. That's people are. I am convinced that people just like. No, I'm not convinced. I want to be as Delulu as some of these people because I would live in so much more peace
It seems like a
if
peaceful
I
place.
if I was just stupid and didn't want to learn. I'm not even joking. Like when they say ignorance is bliss, I agree. But unfortunately, I didn't get to be ignorant. So I'm also mentally ill. But the way that these people are just convinced that they are right, they will not see any other information, and they will ride some random dude's dick so hard that has no idea who they are.
Oh yeah,
None,
people
not
were
one.
so spending so much time and effort defending this guy, Graham Hancock, who's a millionaire, who does not care about them at
Don't
all,
give
who
a
has
shit.
been grifting them for decades. I mean, it's a big question about whether Hancock is a true believer or whether he's a grift artist, and nobody seems to really know. Like nobody feels confident, like or he's some weird combination of the two. But he
And
sure
like,
as
it
hell
doesn't
doesn't
matter.
care. Yeah, he sure as
No,
hell doesn't care
exactly.
about
Like,
you, guy on Twitter. Like he does not care about you. Like you
no.
do not need to defend this person.
This is always what's like just so like phenomenally interesting to me, and also just hugely embarrassing for other people. Um, is like, why are you so concerned with defending this man who doesn't know you exist? Like, why?
It's wild.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
The question before though about like what how did I tell my department over it was very interesting. Nobody was surprised. So I had to talk to my chair, I had to talk to the dean, I had to talk to HR. They had this was not their first rodeo, is what I'll say.
Right. Of course.
Is that academics get attacked like this a lot, and
Yeah.
academics who look different from me, so academics who are women or non-binary folks or trans folks or black folks get attacked like this a lot more. And this is a really not an uncommon. That was the sense I got, was that this happens. Like they never took it seriously. They were like, oh, okay, thank you for letting us know. Now we'll know what these are all about. Like right, like it was
No
that sort
lead.
of a thing, which was nice. They were very supportive. I never felt like I was going to be in danger. Maybe if I was in a different part of the country, maybe that would be a different story. But with my university, I didn't. It felt very much like, oh yeah, we get this all the time. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. I could have been moving to Connecticut, but instead I'm moving to Chicago.
I know. I was
So
following the news. Congratulations, by the way.
thank you.
Was
And
Connecticut was one
Yale
of, oh, Yale was one of the
waitlisted
schools.
me.
Yeah, waitlisted you. What the
They
hell?
waitlisted.
You could have been
Absolute
Yale,
disrespect.
as we call it, Southern Connecticut State University, where I work. The other New Haven University, that other
Yeah.
New Haven University.
It's okay. It's okay. I'll get over it probably.
Chicago's University of Chicago is a pretty good school. I mean,
Oh no,
all right,
University of
yeah.
Chicago was my first choice. It was my first choice.
That's a
I
pretty
just like
incredible
to
university.
be
So,
annoying.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that University of Chicago was my first choice. If Yale would have accepted me, I'd still be going to the University of Chicago.
Yeah, but you
But
want
now
to
I
say
just
that
get
you
to
did.
complain about being waitlisted.
You want to be
Yeah.
able to say that you got accepted to Yale and you said no
And I
thanks.
said no,
That's
thanks.
yeah. You want to be able
Wow.
to. That's a real like.
Oh,
That's
well, I'm
that's
playing the
good
long game.
brag.
You know what I mean? Like I'm going to apply for my PhD, and then turn them down.
If you if you come out with a good master's, I mean, this is not really off subject, but with
Sorry, yeah, I'm just
a
making-
good master's, you probably won't have too much trouble getting into programs like Yale when you have a master's from Chicago or another a program
We'll
like
see.
that. So I mean, I don't know.
And the-
Divinity is not my realm, but
Well, it's so okay. I was talking to one of my friends about this the other day. Like this term divinity, it's confusing everybody so much, that I've started giving like really dumb answers because like I've explained it over and over again on my TikTok, like what it is. So like when people are like, why are you going to a divinity school as an atheist? I'm like, well, one, to become divine. So at
Good
the end of it, like I'll be a god, or like, well, I've heard that like the drug market is like wide open up there. Just like really dumb shit that's obviously not true. That all being said, the divinity school is largely just like a religious studies sort of standalone thing. So going there, you can get an MDiv, you can get a master's in divinity. That'd be if you want to like be a practicing sort of minister or whatever. I don't. Or you can go for your master's in religious studies, which is basically it's just a master's in religious studies that you can sort of like specifically design with your advisor, and you can sort of make it what you want it to be. So anyway, we can get back on track.
I've known people who have gone to divinity school who are atheists or agnostics, and they go into careers in like therapy or in just like counseling, or like there's all kinds of things, that creative things, or they just become academics and they are to do scholarship, and it's so it's does not necessarily imply that it's a religious program, right? I don't think.
Yeah. I understand why the divinity is confusing, but let me just tell everyone, like, I'm not reconverting to Christianity. And, like, I also want to point out, and I say this with a lot of love, but the idea that people associate divinity or studying religion with Christianity tells us a lot
It does.
about how we view other cultures' religions. Okay,
Very true.
because you can
Very
study
true.
other things
You can.
when you study religion.
There's other spiritualities than that.
Yeah, like for instance, I'm studying like the ancient West Asia and like the uh I can't even think of the word, the like Sumerian gods and goddesses, right? And also like Hebrew Bible and all of that stuff. But like there's just so much more than I think a lot of us usually think about. But that's enough about me. Um God, I really can't stay on topic to save my life.
Fine. You're fine.
Let's see.
It's loose. It's fun. It's cool. I mean, I like it. This is more fun. You get a more loose conversation. You get a looser
I've had someone send posts to me via the pub. I was giving a public lecture about this topic, and it contained a CD of loads of documents about conspiracy theories. I'm not sure I know what all of that means.
There's got like a physical, like that's when it gets weird. When you start getting stuff in the mail, like a physical, like dossier. This is how I'm reading this, right? You get.
Sorry. What is so via the pub? Is that like via the publication? Like I'm
publication.
Sorry, I don't know what that...
I'm giving. I was giving. I think publication probably. Yeah. Yeah. So,
okay.
And then post. I'm sure. I'm guessing that means the mail to us Yankees.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. That's.
Sorry, I was like.
So one thing, when you're an archaeologist, you get fake artifacts in the mail. That's a really common thing. So that's always a fun. I mean, it's usually kind of fun. Like I'll get like just straight up rocks like in the mail, and and they'll be like, I found evidence of an ancient mastodon sculpture from 20,000 years ago, and I go, well, that's. I mean, I'm no geologist, but I'm pretty sure that's a rock. And like
pretty sure that's a stone.
Or another one that's kind of fun is people will show up on site and will bring me like a cool artifact, and they'll be like, how old is this? And I'll have to inform them that was like definitely made on like a table lathe by a guy named Jerry in like 1994. Because a lot of times they're fake. They're clearly
that's basically history, though.
Modern reproduction. It's history in
the 1900s.
In a sense, yeah, in a sense. And so that's kind of another fun. But the dossier of conspiracy theory in a literal envelope. That's freaky. That's creepy in a different way. Public archaeology in pubs.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I did know what a pub was. I just didn't realize that was the thing. So I
was guessing pub like publication, but literally in pubs. That sounds like a good job.
Thank you, Joshua. He is a great guest. Conversation is good on his end. I'm sort of just meandering and mumbling.
You're good. It's two-way. We're crushing it.
Two-way. There is what is it called? Synergy. Here. Okay, here's a question. Do you feel there is a connection with how keen we are to give humanity's work over to aliens with how we would have once said it was God's work, the move to atheism, maybe?
I do think it's a secularization. I do. I do think that that's true. I think that the deeper history of conspiracy theories around archaeology, the older explanations do tend to be more biblically based. So a really popular one was the Lost Tribe of Israel. In the 17th, 18th century, when Europeans were sort of first quote unquote discovering places like North and South America with the millions of people living there, they had like a literal a literal existential crisis, right? Because if your whole worldview, like we've already been talking about, is based in biblical literalism, this idea that the Bible is a super historical document that is infallible, and now suddenly you find this group of people who can't be easily explained as a part of that biblical history. What do you do with them? You have to sort of fit them into that worldview, and so a popular choice was the Lost Tribe of Israel, which I don't even pretend to really, because I'm no biblical scholar, but some hole in the Bible where one of the tribes of Israel kind of gets lost, I guess. And so the idea was, we don't know where those folks went, so maybe they somehow made their way to North America and became the ancestor of Native Americans, which is not true. Like, there's no evidence to support anything like that. But it was.
How did they even get? Like, how did they get here? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's where the theory of Atlantis comes in too, right? Is that Atlantis is supposed to be because the classical world and the classics, so the writings of the Greeks and Romans, are allowable. They're admissible in the court of biblical literalism sometimes. So Plato writes about Atlantis, And when Plato's writing about Atlantis, he's it's a metaphor, right? It's a metaphorical city. It's supposed to be this idealized society, but people forever have theorized that Plato was talking about a literal civilization, right? This literal advanced civilization in the ancient world, and but that was out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean somewhere, and maybe it created a land bridge that connected, say, West Africa and South America. So that's how you could understand how like the lost tribe of Israel makes it, right? None of that is backed up by anything resembling evidence. But if you're desperately trying to fit it into a biblical, literal framework, it works, I guess, right? It's the closest thing. It's the closest you can get. So traditionally, a lot of these theories were biblical based, and they were Christian, within the Christian world, and within among Christian believers, and then along with secularization in the last maybe 150 years, you do start to see more and more the rise of theories that come from other explanations that don't rely on the Bible for their basis. And I think
Right.
that's where aliens comes out of, right? Because aliens is lovely. You just swap out Atlanteans for aliens, and
Aliens.
you swap, yeah, or the lost tribe of Israel, or the Atlantean sages for aliens, and it's really the same thing. But now you don't have
Yeah.
to. Now it can be a secular version, right?
It's like
So yeah,
God of the Gaps turned into Aliens of the Gaps.
yeah, yeah,
So fun. Yeah.
yeah.
The other sort of, I don't really know that it's a mystery anymore. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I used to be like obsessed with the statues on Easter Island.
They are fascinating. They're not that old, which is one of the coolest things about them,
I
right?
don't even remember how old they are, but I just
They're
remember
like
being like, how did they get here?
they're like from they're like less than a thousand years old.
Oh, all
Possibly
right. Well,
significantly less. Let's see. I'm
it's okay. Do it.
yeah. Around 1200. Yeah, around 1200 AD. I
Yeah.
think is what their sort of time frame. Gosh, again, nowhere near a specialty of mine, but it's such a cool place. But people automatically associate Easter Island with much older sites like
Stonehenge.
Stonehenge
Just
or
they
like
just said
some,
they saw big rocks and they were
yeah,
like big rocks.
right. And they're actually like, in many cases, thousands or tens of thousands of years difference in time, or tens of thousands of years difference in some cases between some of these much older sites. So it's maybe not maybe 10,000. So anyway, sorry, I interrupted you because I got
No,
so
no, no, you
excited.
didn't interrupt me
We're
at
talking about
all. No,
rocks.
I love it. No, I had nothing else to say, just that I was obsessed also with Easter Island. I don't know. I just loved all of these things that was like, how did that happen? How did that work? We don't really know. Also, I used to watch the History Channel until I realized that it's just terrible. So there's all like, I don't get it. Like, I understand that if we can have Fox News on the air, then like we could pretty much put anything out there. But it really bothers me that we have something called the History Channel and it just has so much absolute nonsense on there. Like so
Nothing on the
much.
History Channel is history. It's wild. It's like the opposite. It's like opposite day. It's truly
It's
just
opposite day. Every day is opposite day.
it is. It's a little bit like Fox News with their fair and balanced thing. It's right. It's just people love talking about 1984 and Newspeak and all that stuff, but that like literally the History Channel literally is that. It really is just we're gonna just call it the opposite of what it is, and
It's
then
so bizarre.
and then
But yeah,
just if we just keep saying it, you'll believe it eventually.
yeah, it's a lot. What, if any, um, are your sort of like favorite? Yeah, I don't know how to explain this from archaeology or history or something like that.
Good question. Like it's. I'm trying to think of what were my early. So I came to archaeology in an interesting way. I was not one of these folks who was. Maybe this is ironic, but I wasn't one of those folks who was like wanted to be an archaeologist since I was like 5 years old. And so many people are like that, including lots of people who don't end up becoming
Oh,
archaeologists,
I
right?
wanted to be an archaeologist too.
Yeah, right. That's so common. And I really wasn't like that. I never thought about archaeology until I was in college and I took my like intro to anthropology class, which was taught by a fabulous professor who I just saw this guy and I was like, I want to do what that guy does. And like that's what I wanted to be. And so I didn't get inspired until a little bit later in life. So Oh, this is a tough question. So I never thought that deeply about it, really, which is sort of sad to admit until I was of already sort of an age of some level of critical thinking. where I could have. So like I remember definitely feeling that way about like Stonehenge and being like, well, what's the deal? That's where it's so mysterious. But then already being of sort of the age where I could go and like just read a book about it and like learn about
Yeah.
it and
To be
find out
honest,
about
I
it.
still don't know very much about Stonehenge. Like I know
Stone
there's like an explanation. I just don't know what it is.
it's part of a much broader landscape of megalithic structures, right? And it's not even the biggest one. Probably if you want to really get blown away, check out Avebury, which is another henge in the same part of England. That's like way bigger and cooler in my opinion.
How is it spelled?
Avebury,
Okay.
Avebury. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. It doesn't have it doesn't maybe at first glance look as impressive but the scale of it has an incredibly massive ditch and like mound wall that would have been just huge. It's a very cool place, but that's just sort of a part of a cultural phenomenon during a span of a few thousand years in Western Europe, where people are just building big structures out of stone, and sometimes they're just single standing stones, sometimes they're like alignments, sometimes they're these complicated henges. You have like dolmens in Ireland, which are like these capped burial grounds. Sometimes they have obvious purposes, like those dolmens are almost always burial mounds, but then others are not so much. Like Stonehenge, it was like a whole community center or some sort of a community center, spiritual center. It's a little bit hard to tell, but they were occupied for hundreds or even thousands of years. It's fat, right? There's incredible history to learn about with those sites, and so I think. We talked earlier about Göbekli Tepe, which is a site I didn't even really learn about until I was probably in graduate school, which is wild because it's an incredibly important site. But that site is like, will blow your mind, and it's really old. It's like 11 and a half, 12,000 years old, and it is a fully formed megalithic monumental site that predates agriculture. It's wild, right? It's one of the most incredible sites in the world. That got my juices going. But I was already like an adult, when I first even started thinking about this stuff. So
Would you like to tell people a little bit more about I can't pronounce it.
yeah,
Göbekli
Gobekli
Tepe.
Tepe is, and again, I'm what I'm. There's some cool people. Maybe if you check out like my Twitter after this, I'll put up a link to like good archaeologists you guys can follow. But there's some really good ones that actually work at this site. But Göbekli Tepe is a site in Turkey. It's sort of near another site in Turkey called Çatalhöyük, and those two sites have in some ways kind of like really flipped on the head what we traditionally thought about how archaeology worked, especially about how agriculture worked. So, for a very long time, the belief was in archaeology that people discover agriculture and that allows for all kinds of changes in society, some of them good, ostensibly like a bigger population and like urbanization, big cities. Some of them not so good, like health problems and serious social hierarchy and things like that. But that leads to social complexity, and from that you get monumental architecture like ziggurats or pyramids or things like that. But Göbekli Tepe and Çatalhöyük, these two sites in Turkey, are at least initially predate agriculture. So seemingly people were getting together and building. Çatalhöyük is a city that would have had about 5 to 10,000 people living at it. Very cool city where the buildings are all built like connected to each other. You would walk around on the roofs. And then Göbekli Tepe is like a spiritual center, probably some sort of ritualistic center with these huge T-shaped pillars with intricate carvings all over them, like huge, like I don't know, they're 10 meters tall or whatever, T-shaped pillars. And it was actually buried underground. They had to unearth it, and it was only found in the 1990s. It's not that old of a site in terms of when it was discovered. So those sites predate agriculture, which suggests that people were actually getting together and sort of sharing symbolic communication and like shared complex culture and art first, and then maybe discovered agriculture afterwards as a way to support those growing population centers. So they're just these fabulous, fascinating sites that are really old and have this opportunity to kind of rewrite how we think about how complex societies emerged. What we would have used to, what people would have used to, and some people still call civilizations, right? Because of course all societies are civilized, all societies are cultured. But some societies build huge cities and monumental architecture, and some don't, right? So
Right, yeah.
that is a difference between some societies. So that's what those two sites are.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
and
fascinating.
somebody points out, yeah, Göbekli Tepe is Hancock's favorite site because he thinks it proves him right about everything. Where ironically, I would argue it actually proves him wrong about everything. But that's
What? Crazy. I mean, I think it's interesting. I always think this is interesting when someone who doesn't have the uh, not credibility, doesn't have the chops, basically, right? Like you're a journalist. I wouldn't go into journalism having taken one class in high school and go to wherever he works and be like, yeah, you know what? I actually know how to do this better than you, and I'm like innovating an entire new like school of journalism, right? Is it impossible? No. But it is interesting to me that you get people that do not, it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Like they do not have the requisite training or knowledge or any of it. Um, and they think that they've come up with something incredibly new and innovative that turns the entire field on its head. It's like if you are the only person that's having this realization and like everybody else that has the training, et cetera, uh thinks that you're wrong, maybe you should listen. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and that describes Hancock very well. He very much wants to be this iconoclast. He wants
Don't
to
we
be
all?
this, yeah, he wants to be this guy that is turning the science on its head, and he gets very angry that people don't take his theories seriously. But he also refuses to back any of his theories up with any evidence. And like it's like in line if you do end up going back and watching the show, which you shouldn't. But let's say you decided you wanted to punish yourself and you did. You go back and watch the show. Like sentence 2 of the show is, listen, I'm not an archaeologist. I'm a journalist. I'm not.
Yeah, so
I
you
don't.
should have wrapped it up right
Yeah,
then.
I'm not trying to be an archaeologist. I'm just a guy asking questions, and we've all met people on the internet who are just a guy asking questions, right? And he like says that like straight up, like first paragraph of a sentence, and yet so he wants to be this guy who's going to turn the science on its head, but he doesn't want to do any of the work. Like he doesn't want to actually, engage with the evidence and try
No
and,
way.
so you've got like the Graeber and Wengrow book that came out a couple of years ago, which was very popular. And I disagree with a lot of stuff in that book.
Sorry, what was his name?
So hold on, what's the actual name of the book? All right, I'm going to Google it. And Wengrow, The Dawn of Everything. So this book
Oh,
came out a
okay.
couple of years ago called The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber and David Wengrow. And I disagree with a lot of the things in that book, and so do a lot of other archaeologists. But those guys at least did the work, right? They like read
Right.
the stuff, studied the data, and presented an argument that I think is flawed in some ways. But the book is respected for trying to do something big with real
Sure.
evidence. And I don't think that that's at all what Hancock has done here. He just wants to like spout like fantasy. I've been saying to the guy for like a year, just write fantasy novels, man. Just be like George R. R. Martin. Those guys make so much money. Just write a fantasy book and
Yeah,
take your
you can do it.
inspiration from the ancient world. I go for it, man.
Because
Go
nobody
for it.
cares at that point.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I
Like,
would say you are doing something valuable for society if you write yourself a good fantasy book. That's cool,
hey,
man.
I love some escapism. Um, okay, so I want to be respectful of your time. I know we need to wrap it up soon. I do want to say if you're interested in reading something that's like very comprehensive about some shit that went down in history, Eric Klein has a book called 1177, The Year Civilization Collapsed.
I don't
Really
know.
good. And Eric Klein is a well-respected academic, brilliant. Anyway, I don't know that it's like heavy on the archaeology. I don't remember it being that way, but it definitely is very much like in line with the archaeological record. But it is like a popular level book. So um
Eric
I
Klein.
love it.
Eric Klein. I know. Eric Klein is an archaeologist, isn't he? I think.
I don't know.
I think he
I
is.
don't know if he's an archaeologist. So maybe it is. I don't know.
I think we're Twitter mutuals.
Well, Eric Klein, you want to come on? Hey buddy.
Yeah.
Uh
Is this who I'm thinking of? Maybe. Oh yeah. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he's at George Washington University, isn't that him? Right, Eric Klein.
I think so.
Yeah,
Eric
yeah,
H.
yeah,
Klein.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I think he's the guy that always wears his cool ties.
Yeah, he's I believe he's actually an archaeologist. Bronze
Oh, all
Age
right. Well
archaeology,
then,
ancient
I
Greece.
lied.
He's a cool guy. I like him on Twitter anyway.
Let's see. Hold on. Okay. So, if you have like, if you want to do like your mini Minute Man, interested to hear your critique. I used to work with
Oh,
Wingrow.
so I have to think about it. I'm not willing. I got it. I
Okay.
spoke out the side of my face. I need to think about it. I like it's just I think actually most of the book is quite good, and I think it does a service because it was a book that broke through to a public audience in a way that very few do, and said some really important stuff. So I'm not like hypercritical of it, but I don't agree with everything in it, right? And it's like so it's but that was a book that tried to do something big, and I think in many ways it succeeded in doing that, and I think that would have been a better model for something that for Hancock, if that's what we want to do. A book of similar, somebody asked about Guns, Germs, and Steel. That book is shit. All right, so don't read that one. That book is some crap. Okay, so that guy's a hack. Oh, so
What do you think about Sapiens?
yeah. Sapiens also, again, I haven't actually read Sapiens,
I haven't read it.
but I know, but people whose opinions I respect did not care for it. Is what I'll say.
Okay, this is not scientific in any way, but when there's a certain brand of people, I can't explain it exactly, but it's like I can think of this guy who was like a big into like the carnivore diet. And I can't explain it, but he was super into that book and I was like, I don't think that's going to be something I read, enjoy, or that is like
Is it EvoPsych? Does it have evolutionary psychology in it?
I
Evolutionary
don't
psychology.
remember because I didn't read it. Because all I
Yeah,
needed was like a couple of people from that group that I was like, nah, if they like it that much,
it can't be good. Yeah, it can't be good. Yeah,
something's off.
if those sorts of guys are usually into like evolutionary, like Jordan Peterson, evolutionary psychology shit, and that's another place that gets mixed up with archaeology a lot, and
When all of a
that's
sudden Jordan Peterson's a Bible scholar that knows everything and was going to tell you all about the
I
archaeology,
noticed
and like,
that.
what are you
Yeah.
mansplaining, sir?
I noticed that he was arguing with the Pope. He was really getting into it with literally the
I
Pope.
to mansplainers love Sapiens. Yeah, that feels right. That feels right. Again, I haven't read the book. I don't know. Could be great. I'm just saying my instinct, what I went off of, why I didn't read it, why I'm probably not going to read it. Um, but I'm open to people that I respect and have the knowledge telling me that I'm wrong. They just haven't yet. Um, okay, so we are gonna wrap it up. Thank you everyone for being here. Before we go, a few rapid fire questions for you
Hit me.
that have nothing to do with archaeology.
Oh, you
One,
better.
if you had to perform in a flash mob, what would be the song?
Oh, it's got to be what's that song from
I
it's
don't
gonna
know.
be something from something my kids have been watching. What's that song from Encanto that was like the wild hit.
Oh, we don't talk about
We don't talk about that guy.
what's his name? I haven't seen the movie. We don't talk about
I'm googling it.
Bruno.
Bruno, that's it. That's the one.
My brain said we don't talk about Juno, and I was like, no, that's me thinking of like a movie from when I was a
Yeah,
teenager. Okay.
Juno. I remember that movie. Yeah.
If you were running for president, what would your slogan be?
What would my slogan be? I no bullshit allowed.
Perfect.
Just
Perfect.
with the swear in there.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Absolutely not. I was literally born in the city of New Haven, folks. Okay, I was born a mile from Pepe's and Sally's
He
and
was born
Modern.
in a pizza
I was
parlor. Okay.
born in a pizza parlor.
He's Italian.
I am Italian American. Fruit, with the exception of tomato, and you know that is absolutely an exception that proves the rule. Does not belong near pizza. I'm sorry. That's
That's okay. That's
strong
your
opinions
opinion.
about
I
that.
like asking people that. I've asked you and one other person, and the other person was like staunchly pro pineapple.
Well, we got to have a debate. That's the
So
next
I'm
episode.
enjoying this a lot. Yeah. He also had very strong opinions on like the hierarchy of cereals, which I agree with personally. Like we're on the same page, but I did find it funny. Um, if you had to use an ice cream flavor to describe your personality, what would it be?
I'm gonna go with like a peanut butter crunch. Yeah, that feels right. I don't know why.
Okay.
I couldn't
It's
tell you
fine.
why.
You don't have to. You
It's
don't
just
have
the
to think
first.
about
That
it.
was like an ink blot test. First thing that popped into my
Exactly.
head.
No thoughts, just vibes. You know what I mean? Um, who's the most interesting person you've met in the last year?
Oh shoot! The
Just kidding.
most the most interesting person I've met. Uh, oh, what's her name? Probably somebody on Twitter, almost certainly. Probably some of the cool archaeologists I've been on Twitter. What's the name of that woman that does the space archaeology?
Oh, I don't
Oh,
know, but that sounds interesting.
what is her name? Shoot, 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 shoot. What's her name? And I've chatted with her a little bit on Twitter. Oh, she does, and maybe it's unfair to pick somebody whose name I can't think of off the top of my head.
No,
But
it's fine.
she's like incredible, and she does like the archaeology of like the International Space Station,
Ooh.
and I just think that's like so cool. It's doing
I
such cool.
would love to find her on Twitter when you have a moment. It doesn't have to be right now,
Oh,
but eventually.
although the alternative answer and a little bit more serious answer, another archaeologist named Keisha Supernant, who is an indigenous archaeology Métis archaeologist from Canada, who uses ground penetrating radar to help locate unmarked graves on reservation, not on indigenous boarding schools from the 20th
Yeah.
century. So a
Oh,
little more serious, a little more heavy, but her work is incredible. And I got to see her give a talk a couple of months ago and just incredible. So that's another person to check out, Keisha Supernat.
Sarah Parcak.
Sarah Parchak is
Parchak.
not actually the person I was thinking about, but another extremely good one. She does also do some of the space archaeology stuff, but Sarah and I have chatted actually quite a lot.
Is
And
she the person? I feel like if I'm thinking of the right person, she's so funny on Twitter.
she is, and she's
Okay,
very
she just like
pointed,
roasts
and
men, and I'm
she
like,
does.
what?
You'd like Sarah. Sarah is
I
great,
do.
and she doesn't fuck around, and also is like an international woman of mystery.
I
Like
love it.
hangs out with celebrities and like, but nobody knows why. She's just yeah, what a cool person.
Sarah, if you're
So there you go.
watching this,
The three
take me
people
under
I
your
thought of
wing.
immediately were three women
Perfect.
archaeologists who are
Yeah.
doing incredible stuff.
I love this. Okay, and last but not least, what is the last show that you've binged?
The last show I binged, oh, I was probably Andor actually, which was the Star Wars, the Star Wars show, and I don't watch a ton of television. That show was really good, and I like Star Wars. I'm not like a huge super fan guy, but I thought that show really elevated what you could do with like a Star Wars show. It was very political and like quite lefty. So
Mm.
yeah, that was a good one. If you've been weary of getting into any of that sort of Disney extended universe stuff, that's definitely like the best work I think they've done.
Thank you. Perfect, perfect, and wonderful. Okay, so on that note, I will stop asking you the rapid fire questions.
They're
Thank you
so
for being a
good
good
though.
sport. They are a lot of fun, and I have a lot of them.
I want to answer like 20 more, but I don't. I do have to go help put my kids to
Yeah,
bed.
yeah. Hey, listen. Fair enough. We can do another like random. I should just invite a bunch of people on and then just ask a bunch of like random questions and let
that
them all
sounds
sort of go at it. I think it'd
that
be
sounds
fun.
fun, and I want you to know that if you ever wanted to have me on again, I'd do it because this was great fun. This was a
Yeah,
blast.
I would love that actually. I love having people on more than once and in different groups because I think like I learned so much listening to people talk to each other
Hmm.
that I just feel happy to like host it. Um all right, can you please tell the people where they can find you, how they can support you, if they can support you, and the last book that you read that you thought was interesting that other people should read?
Oh my God, you're a
There's your
book.
last rapid fire one.
My lat the book question. I gotta think on the book
I
question a
know,
little
it's the
bit.
worst.
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe read the Dawn of Everything. That's what I'm gonna tell you to do. Read the Dawn of Everything and think, but read it really critically because it got a lot of praise and it also got a lot of criticism. And I think both sides maybe needed to come towards each other. So I think read that and put your thinking cap on because it does get you thinking and that does a
Not your
service.
tinfoil hat, your
No, no,
thinking
no,
cap.
no. You're thinking cap. If you want to find me on the internet, there's the two places I really hang out. First and foremost is I have a YouTube channel that's called that's at Archaeology Tube, and that's my like main thing that I put effort into and care about. And then I have a Twitter where I spend way too much time and I try and be funny and say dumb shit. And that's actually at Archaeology Game, or so slightly different names at Archaeology Game. I also have like a TikTok and other stuff that's the same name, Archaeology Tube, so you can find me in those places too.
His TikTok is actually cool because it's a lot of you drawing stuff.
It is. I have those on my YouTube as well.
Okay.
So everything that's on TikTok is also on my YouTube. But yeah, I put all my shorter stuff in there. I like to do art, and I like to do art that's both archaeological and non-archaeological. And I put a lot, and I just throw that stuff up there. So if you're into art, you like painting or drawing, I like doing that stuff. I'm no great artist, but I like to. I have fun with it, and I like sharing it. So yeah, that's another reason to check it out. Yeah. So
All
yeah.
right.
So yeah, my
Perfect.
TikTok's also archaeology tube if you want to check it out on TikTok.
Yay, you should. Everyone should do that. So I am going to try and end the show. I don't know how to do this. I'm a boomer. I love you if you're a boomer. It's a state of mind, and it is the one that I live in. Okay, so in any event, thank you so much for being here. This was delightful. We'll definitely have to set something up to do it again.
Yeah.
And on that note, everybody, stay chaotic. Be the problem you want to see in the world, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye. If I remember how to do this correctly. Okay, bye.